Hello, folks, and welcome to the show. My name is Avrum Rosensweig. This program is proudly sponsored by a devoted BAYT member in heartfelt appreciation of Rabbi Daniel Korobkin's extraordinary leadership. His wisdom, compassion, dedication, and scholarship have left an enduring impact on the BAYT community. May his remarkable legacy continue to inspire and strengthen the community for generations to come. You know, there are rabbis who deliver sermons. There are scholars who unlock the treasures of Jewish thought. And then there are exceptional leaders who enter the life of a community, sharing in celebration, comforting it through sorrow, guiding it through uncertainty, and leaving an influence that will endure long after their tenure has ended. Today, I am honored to welcome Secher Rav, Rabbi Daniel Korobkin, the senior rabbi and Mora D'Atra of Beth Avrum Yoseph, a Toronto congregation, affectionately known as the BAYT. Welcome, Rabbi.
Thank you. And that was such a nice intro. I hope to be worthy of it one day.
We're not finished yet. This conversation carries particular meaning because Rabbi Korobkin is now serving his final year at the BAYT. After arriving in 2011, he will conclude nearly 16 years of distinguished spiritual leadership before making Aliyah and beginning a new chapter in his life and that of his family's. During his years at the BAYT, Rabbi Korobkin has helped guide one of North America's largest Orthodox congregations through COVID, increasing antisemitism, October 7th, periods of celebration, challenge, and profound change. Through his sermons, classes, pastoral leadership, and personal relationships, he has strengthened Torah learning and encouraged thoughtful engagement with Jewish philosophy. He has helped create a community in which Jews of differing background could feel welcome and valued. Rabbi Korobkin has carried the voice of the BAYT far beyond its walls. As president of the Rabbinical Council of America, the RCA, he represented Orthodox rabbinic leadership across North America. In difficult moments, particularly amid rising anti-Semitism and the challenges facing Israel, he has spoken publicly with clarity and an unwavering commitment to the Jewish people. Rabbi Korobkin is the acclaimed translator and annotator of Yehuda Levi's classic work, The Kuzari, in defense of the despised faith. Today, we will look back at the rabbi's accomplishments and his difficult moments. We will discuss the challenging responsibility of the modern rabbi, the future of Toronto's Jewish community, and the powerful spiritual meaning of leaving one's Jewish home to build another in Jerusalem. Rabbi Korobkin has led congregations in San Diego, Los Angeles, Allentown, and Toronto, of course. He's the father of 10, he's a Zaidi, and he's the husband of a very special woman, Karen. He's a fine man and someone I hold in very high esteem. Rabbi, welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Thank you, Avram, once again for that embarrassing introduction. Thank you. Very, very kind.
Deserving, Rabbi, deserving. I think most people would say deserving, maybe not everybody. You know, Rabbi, when I first spoke to you about doing this show, your response immediately was, listen, Avram, I'm not leaving for another year. And I said, you know what, I would be very honored to sort of have this as a mark of the beginning of that year. In other words, you have 12 months ahead of you. And if we could have an interview about how you feel about the last number of years and the future, then I would be deeply honored. So again, I thank you for doing this. How are you feeling about this change?
Well, it's very bittersweet, you know. A number of rabbis have expressed the idea that, you know, when you become a pulpit rabbi, it's a lifetime commitment. I never really believed in that. I felt that it's a career, it's a vocation, it's something that every Jew should think to himself or herself, what can I do to contribute to my people, to help my people in a way that I feel will be meaningful? And I feel I've been doing this for my entire career, for the last pretty much almost 40 years. But I still view that at the same time, it's always time in life to start a new chapter. No one should ever be daunted to feel, well, I'm this, I'm X. I don't believe in confining yourself into a box. So I'm ready to start another chapter. I feel that I've made a contribution to my fellow Jews. And now it's time for me to move on. I'm going to always try to find a way to contribute, but it's probably going to be very different when I'm in Israel than from the way that I've been doing it here. So I guess to answer your question in a simpler way is, on the one hand, I feel a sort of a sad leaving. And there's a part of me that feels like, guilty that I'm leaving people behind.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I am looking forward to the next chapter together with Karen, and hopefully some more of my children will follow us.
Rabbi, when you say leaving some people behind, what do you mean by that?
Well, I'm not taking my whole congregation with us. When my very first Shabbat, when I gave the sermon, everyone knew that we were headed towards Israel.
Yeah.
Everyone knew that our passion is in the land, and that we are religious Zionists. And so for my very first sermon, I said, I just want everyone to know that my job is to turn off the lights after you've all made Aliyah. And unfortunately, I have not fully succeeded. I've seen a lot of families make Aliyah, and that's something that we should talk about as far as the evolution of the Jewish community that I've noticed over the years. But Baruch Hashem, thank God, a lot of families have made Aliyah, but not everyone. And I think that there are some people who feel bad that they're not able to make Aliyah for whatever reason. For some people, it may be economic. For other people, it may be familial. Everyone in Canada that I know of is thinking about relocating, and that's something we can get to later. So I do feel bad in that respect. I'm not going down with the ship, or whatever other metaphor you may want to come up with.
I know that you could have been a computer guy, but faith had it that a rabbinical position opened up and you grabbed that one first. Succinctly put, what's it like to be a rabbi?
First of all, there's so many different kinds of rabbi. And so it's not really so easy to categorize what it's like to be a rabbi. I can tell you what it's like to be a rabbi of a congregation, a congregational rabbi. And I know, Avrum, your father of blessed memory was a congregational rabbi as well for most of his career. So you probably have as much of insight as I do. It is a life that is 24/7. Meaning that you're on call for the entire time. Your phone can ring at any time, and you have to be available to every single congregant at all times. So it has to be a labor of love. And if a person is not passionate about the rabbinate, they won't be able to succeed.
How many families do you have in your shul?
We're in the mid 700s right now. Thank God. Yeah. I think we're the largest Orthodox shul strictly Orthodox shul in Canada.
Sort of a silly question, but would you say you know most of them?
Yes. Yeah, I would say so. Some I know better than others. It's very delicate when you're a pulpit rabbi.
Yeah.
How intrusive do you wish to be? I know the congregants that I know best are the ones who made some level of effort to try to create a relationship with me. It's just by nature of the congregation. It's so large that the ones, who are going to be squeaky wheels are going to get more grease, if I can use that metaphor. And then there are many members who I know on a more, let's say, casual basis, who I think the world of, but I haven't developed a more significant relationship with, because sometimes people are a little bit more shy or not as open to developing that connection.
Rabbi, one of the challenges that I had as the executive director of a Jewish organization was that I knew a lot of people, both in the Jewish world and the non-Jewish world, in the humanitarian world. So if I walked into a Jewish environment, I was bound to be approached by many, many people. I'm a bit of a shy guy, although I seem somewhat extroverted, but I can spend a lot of time by myself. So that was a challenge for me. When you walk into a room, in particular your shul on Shabbat or the morning services or a shir you're about to begin, how do you face that barrage of folk who are coming your way?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, first of all, thankfully, when I walk into shul, usually people are just getting started in their prayers. So that's my excuse to not have to socialize at the beginning of services. It's really at the end of services where Usually, a group of people will approach me afterwards to either discuss what I've just spoken about, or to discuss some other aspect that they need to ask a rabbi about, get some input, tell me what's going on in their life, and then to recess to the kiddush, the congregational kiddush. And so I do confess that there are different kinds of rabbis, and I think this is one of my shortcomings, but as a congregational rabbi. But some rabbis are energized when they walk into a crowded room.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
And the extroverts. I'm not as much of an extrovert as I think I should be for a congregation this size. So when I come to a kiddush, I do socialize and I'm very friendly and I try my best, but it's not something that comes as naturally to me as maybe to some other people.
Have you worked on that then?
Yeah, you got to work on it. I mean, every profession is supposed to make a person a better version of himself or herself. And I know that I've gained more from being the rabbi of the BAYT than the BAYT has gained by having me as their rabbi.
That's nice. Rabbi, I'm a rabbi's son.
Yeah.
My father was a rabbi in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada for 36 years until he passed away in 1989. Being a rabbi's son was very special because everybody in the shul knew who I was and my 4 sisters. And we got certain perks because of it. Sometimes we were watched very closely, however. And if there were 5 young boys who were speaking during the services, generally would be me who was targeted with that, however. I do remember that we were always the last ones there at the end of a service. I go, Dad, come on. I want to go home. Let's go home already. Did you have rules, formally or informally, for your family? I know, thank God, you're the father of 10 kids. You have a beautiful wife, Karen. Were there some things that you put in place in order to make sure you're not just a rabbi of a huge congregation, but you're a dad, you're a husband?
There have been sort of unspoken rules that we've put into place. I wouldn't say that we have any formal policies. Well, maybe here's what I would say. We do a lot of entertaining in our home, yes. But what we try to do, there are 2 main Shabbat meals, the Friday night meal and the Shabbat morning meal after services. We try our best that if we're going to have guests for one meal, we have no guests for the other meal. Yeah. And it's I think I've gotten better at this in creating the life-job balance or family-job balance. But the rabbinate doesn't lend itself as easily to other professions that are more 9 to 5. So I think each one of my children is unique. Each one of them has a unique personality and a unique approach to Judaism and to God and to his parents or her parents. And I think each one of my children has reacted in a slightly different way to being a rabbi's child. I think for some it was easier and some it was more enriching. And I think for some it was more difficult and less enriching. One of my sons, who I think in particular had a more difficult time, did share with myself and my wife that he always felt like he was being judged as the rabbi's son. Right. And that's what created a lot of discomfort. To this day, he has a hard time walking into a synagogue because he thinks that all eyes are on him, even though it's been years since he's been the rabbi's son. He's now an adult, and he's been out of the house for many years. But so there can be lasting effects. But I think overall, the lasting effects are more positive than negative.
That's good to hear. I myself went through a lot of different iterations in my life as a rabbi's son. Excuse me. And I left Orthodoxy when I was around 20. You and I have discussed that on other interviews that you and I have done. And I always felt like a major disappointment to the shul, because the congregants really looked to the rabbi and the rabbi's family to be somewhat righteous, and to be halachic in nature if it's an Orthodox shul. So I struggle with that as well. Thank God I'm 66 now and I've overcome most of that. But these things always tend to stay with you,
Yeah. Well, you know what? I've tried to tell each one of my children, some more explicitly than others. Mommy and I chose a certain path, a religious path for ourselves. Your path is your unique path. We've put you on a path that we think will be good for you, we think will be enriching for you. We think it'll make your life more enjoyable, more meaningful, more textured, more with greater purpose. But when you become an adult, it's your life, and you have to choose your path, your unique path. And I think each and every one, I hope that through that empowerment, each one of my children has chosen a path that is unique to that child. Some more religious, if whatever that word means, even some less religious, whatever that means. And I'm proud of the achievements of each one of my children. And I don't view one child more beloved to me because he's more religious per se than the other child.
Yeah, kol hakavod. Good for you. You know, COVID wasn't a great time. It was a very, very hard time for shuls. But I will tell you what I remember about your shul during COVID is after Shabbat, that your family would do Havdalah. It's the evening service after Shabbos, sort of separating the holy to the secular week. And I remember how beautiful it was to watch you sing and to see your family around you joining you, and that candle on the screen, which flickered in a very particular, almost like holy way. That was very beautiful to watch, Rabbi.
That's nice of you to say, Avram. Thank you. I mean, we really I think just about every single congregational rabbi struggled tremendously during COVID. First of all, it was, as we say, totally unprecedented for a rabbi to basically say, okay, we're locking the doors for Shabbos, and we're not letting anyone come. That hasn't happened in my lifetime before or ever since. And so to have to do that for over a year, and to be in this very, very difficult situation of trying to keep a community together. Remember, Zoom had just come out. It was a new phenomenon. It was something that people were just getting used to, of video conferencing. And to thank God, God sometimes provides the cure at the same time that he provides the malady. And so this was one example where video conferencing became a thing. And so one of the things that we did, many things online to compensate for the fact that we couldn't meet in person. And one of the things that I felt that we should do is have a family Havdalah, bring everyone into my family's Havdalah. And we did games and we did goofy things. We realized that people needed a pick-me-up. People needed to be cheered up because so many people, especially people living alone, were depressed, especially over Shabbat where there's no phone and there's no television and stuff like that. We wanted to give them something to say, what a pleasure to open up my computer after 24 hours of no computer and then to get this experience. So not only did we have a musical Havdalah every Motzei Shabbat, but we had like a trivia game, and then we did a goofy classic rock song with different lyrics, just to give people, put a smile on people's faces. And, I'm glad it worked. It wasn't something that came easily all the time, but we wanted to give people a real pick-me-up.
Is Zoom halachically acceptable in an Orthodox environment? Let's say for people who otherwise would be very alone?
To do what?
On Shabbat, could you have Zoom services?
Yeah, so that was a big discussion. When I happened to have been privileged to be president of the Rabbinical Council of America, which is the Orthodox fraternity of rabbis, during COVID. And that was a big question that was presented to our poskim, our rabbinic decisors, the great rabbis who set policy for the Orthodox community. And it was very clear. They came out and said that while there might be some arguments to be made to permit it, we cannot permit it as a matter of public policy, simply because it's just going to devolve and degenerate into the disintegration of Jewish community and also to the disintegration of Shabbat. And so, and by the way, that was a very prescient psak halacha, because the conservative movement, just to show you the difference, actually did permit people to come to services via Zoom,
Yes.
And held Zoom services. And I don't think that those shuls have actually really recovered from that. Attendance has been way down in congregations that were heavily reliant on Zoom services. So look, that's not to say that we didn't suffer either long term from the effects of COVID. We're still seeing some of the after effects in the way services are held, but not to the same degree.
As a congregational rabbi, would something like that psak, that determination that Zoom is not acceptable on Shabbat or the Yom Tovim, the holidays, does that cause you a certain amount of pain knowing your 700 families, the many members that you have in your congregation will not be able to be part of a service? How do you juxtapose, your feelings as a man, someone who cares deeply about your congregants, versus a rabbi who's devoted and loyal to halakha?
It's a great question. This question really applies in so many different walks of religious life. I just had a person in my office this morning who was struggling with the fact that their sibling is entering into a same-sex marriage, and this person who was struggling with it is Orthodox, and they know that this is not sanctioned within Orthodox Judaism. And how do they manage that? Or let's say someone's loved one is marrying out of the faith. How do you balance that? Do you go to the wedding? Do you not go to the wedding? Do you show support? And my response to that person is that life in general is a juggling act. One of my rabbis once said that life is like trying to make a bed with a fitted sheet that's just a little bit too small for the mattress.
Excellent. Yes.
You pull over one corner and then the other corner pops up.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So the fact is that sometimes you have to have dual personalities. On the one hand, you have to show extreme sensitivity, sympathy, connection, and love for someone who is doing something that perhaps is not religiously acceptable. At the same time, you stand for something. I'm a religious person. I embrace the Torah. I embrace the laws of God. I know they were given for a purpose, and I have a certain integrity that I need to uphold. And so, in a situation like that, we have to preserve the Jewish community. Look, one of the jobs that every rabbi has, I'm part of a long chain of tradition. My family is part of a long chain. I'm one link in a long chain of my family, but I'm also part of a link of rabbis going back thousands of years. And part of the way I view my job is I have to make sure that the next person that I'm going to pass the baton to is going to be able to take hold of a Judaism that I have not distorted beyond recognition. Hopefully I'll have made some improvements, but I can't do anything that's going to compromise my faith to the point where it's going to cause damage in the future. And that's really why I did respect the psak halacha, the ruling of those rabbis who came out during COVID and said, it's just not going to be beneficial in the long term for the Jewish community if we allow Zoom services.
Rabbi Korobkin, the thing that I love a lot about you is that you're very eclectic in nature. And when we look at your background, coming from Los Angeles, your father, God bless his soul, being an entertainment lawyer, one of his clients was Megadeth, which was a heavy metal rock and roll band of the greatest proportions, really. Your mother, God bless her, she should be well. She was on the Kindertransport as a child. She has written a couple of books. You come from a very eclectic background and a very interesting background. How did your mother and your father shape who you are ultimately today?
Well, I'll start with my mother first, because I think her side of the family had more influence than my dad's side of the family. My mother comes from a very, very long line of rabbis. Her mother's family is the Horowitz family. And this particular strand of Horowitz's has a very prestigious line of rabbis that we all come from. And so her parents were murdered in the Shoah. Her father was a rabbi, and his life was cut short sometime in his 40s. And I guess there was a part of me that always felt that maybe part of my responsibility is to live my life not only for myself, but for him as well. My grandfather that I never met. I don't know how much of that was conscious or subconscious and how much of that went into my decision to enter the rabbinate. but that's certainly, my mother's more of the intellectual and always pushed me to read more and to study more. And so that's where that part comes from. My dad is the artist. God bless him. God bless his soul. Zichrono livracha. He was an artist. He was a musician, and he was a lawyer. He used to write for television. He produced a couple of films, and so he had that creative spirit. That's how we ended up in Los Angeles. And one of the things that impressed me so much is that he was able to live in two worlds. He was able to live in the world of entertainment in Hollywood, and he was also able to live in the Orthodox community. I remember there were times when he had to go see a client, a band that was playing in a club on Sunset Boulevard. This would happen, not infrequently, where he had to go see them on a summer Friday afternoon. He would go to see their first show and would make it back sometimes with seconds to spare before Shabbos started. But he always made it home in time. And that really provided me with the grounding that I needed, that no matter what I was going to do in life, it would be possible to be a good Jew and also to realize whatever dreams and aspirations that I had to pursue those dreams. So that's what my dad represented for me. And he also made life that much more colorful in everything that he did.
You speak about your mother and losing her parents in the Shoah. God bless their souls. Recently, I interviewed Michael Leiter, who is Israel's ambassador to the United States. He lost his son after October 7th, who was in the army. And he told me a story, Rabbi, which was, in a nutshell, that he spoke to his son while he was in Tiranut, which is basic training in Israel. And he said to him, son, his name is Moshe. He said, how do you walk so far with so much weight on your back? He says, I'll tell you, Abba. He said, what I do is I add more weight. He said, you add more weight? What do you mean? He said, I add the weight of your parents, my grandparents, those who died in the Shoah. I carry them on my back as I walk these long distances as an IDF soldier. And Michael told me that he does. Pardon me?
His name is Yechiel. Sorry.
It's Michael and Yechiel. Right.
Got it. Right.
Yechiel told me, you're right. And I'm right too. Yechiel told me that he does that as the ambassador. His job, as we can imagine, is so incredibly difficult. But he said he adds the extra weight on his back, carrying those who passed in the Shoah and other Jews throughout history. Do you have a special feeling, a special response to the Holocaust survivors in your congregation?
Well, yeah, first of all, let me just say that the modern Holocaust survivors of today are those who have endured tremendous trials as a result of October 7th, 2023. Yeah. Yechiel Leiter, the ambassador, is just one example of that. And I've had the opportunity to hear him and meet him a number of times. We had him speak here at the BAYT a few years ago, and he is really one of my heroes. He's a heroic person. I think that there are so many people that I've grown up with, my parents' age and older, that went through the Shoah. And it really sensitized my entire generation to a certain kind of person that we could always look up to. I think, when we talk about it, I grew up in America, and we always used to talk about the greatest generation, people who had fought during World War II. That's the generation that the baby boomers looked up to. In the Jewish baby boomer people, growing up, our heroes were the people who were not necessarily the fighters, although don't get me wrong, there were partisans and people who did fight during the Shoah as well, and I knew some of them, but also people who just were able not only to survive, but to pick up the broken pieces of their lives after the Shoah and to rebuild, many of them losing spouses, losing children, and learning how to put the pain and the broken pieces deep down and build a strong exterior to be able to thrive and to move on from that. And that's just something that I wish my children would have the opportunity to see, and to really relate to those kinds of people.
Are there still survivors in your shul?
Sure, sure. My mother is still with us, thank God. I mean, she's in LA, but yes, we still do, but they're becoming fewer and fewer, sadly.
Rabbi, let's take a step back into your shul. Um, Firstly, I've often thought about this, thinking about your career here in Toronto. You're an American. You were head of a shul in Allentown, Pennsylvania. You can't get
Yeah,
more American than that, I don't think.
that's true.
Right? Exactly. You
I
come
mean,
to,
we used to have apple pie at the kiddishes, if that's any
did you
indication.
really?
Once in a while, yeah.
I hope there was cholent there as well. So you come to Toronto, and the way I look at Toronto is we're growing, we're changing, we're clearly becoming more metropolitan, but there was a very, very strong shtetl component to who we were, I would argue, even when you came here in 2011. Did you have to make adjustments for that?
Um, I like the way you phrased it. Did we have to make adjustments? One of the things that I promised Karen, my wife, when we moved here, is that if we're going to make this monumental change, leave family behind and things like that, we have to be true to ourselves. I wasn't going to try to be someone else that I wasn't. And occasionally that got me into trouble. And I was more outspoken when I first arrived than perhaps I should have been, not realizing sometimes you have to sort of surmise the lay of the land and be a little bit more circumspect before you open up your mouth. I've learned that over the years, a little, more and more. But what what I will say is this: there are many, many very, very intelligent, learned, scholarly people in the Toronto Jewish community. But what I've noticed is almost like a split personality, and that is people associate traditional Judaism with a rejection of secularism, and people associate higher scholarship with a moving away from Judaism. I think those perspectives are more pronounced, let's say, in a town like Toronto than from where I am used to hanging out on both coasts, mostly California, but also in the New York area as well. I grew up in a world where you could have full integration and synthesis between those two worlds, whether it's the entertainment industry or whether it's the scholarly industry. I am university trained. And what I discovered is that while there are many, many very highly educated people, we have university professors and experts in Jewish studies of the highest echelons here in Toronto, in my own congregation and in other congregations. But they're not, and they're Orthodox, but they're not viewed as being part of what we would call tradition as much as someone who maybe presents in a different way. And that to me is sort of has been a struggle in a certain way. I think that for that reason, there were some people in the rabbinic community who didn't know what to do with me.
Yeah.
Because they felt like, who is this guy? You got to choose. You can't, like Elijah the prophet said to the people, to the Jews who were trying to deliberate between Baal, the idolatry, and God. He said to them, you can't vacillate. You got to choose a side. And I felt that there were some people who were expecting me to choose a side, choose either traditional Judaism or choose the world of Jewish scholarship, but you can't have both. And my response to that is, what are you talking about? Of course you can. I think that in certain circles, even in Lakewood today, people are realizing that you can integrate the two. The amount of scholarship that is being poured out of Lakewood and other yeshiva places is incredible today, more so, I think, than ever before. But that really hasn't hit the Toronto Jewish community. I think that I helped a little bit to make a little bit of a mark in that area over the course of the last dozen years. Twice we did something on the yard site, the Memorial Day of Maimonides, where we did a Maimonides symposium.
I was there. Yeah, I was there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And really the effort was to try and demonstrate that Maimonides represents the best of traditional Torah Judaism and the best of pursuing scholarly thought, and to try to integrate them in a balanced and healthy way. And, I think there's a certain element of our community that is still hungry for that. But I think by and large, the mainstream Orthodox community just doesn't have that orientation.
I had to laugh, and I apologize for this, but I remember in your first few years, you were somewhat contentious within the Orthodox community. And you told me a story in our previous discussions. You were actually called in by the powers that be in the rabbinical industry here in Toronto, right?
Yeah, they didn't know what to do with me. I wrote an article for one of the newspapers that doesn't exist here anymore, about how you could view the story, the first chapter of Genesis, through the eyes of the Higgs boson, accelerator, and how they talked at the time about the God particle that had just been discovered and been proven to exist. And I talked about how the God particle can be reconciled with the account of creation. And I said, this is what our great commentators in the medieval world were doing. They were trying to integrate science and Torah. There's no conflict between the two. And I think some of the more traditional rabbis really felt that this was problematic. And they called me in, and we had a discussion about my theology. And, for some, I guess I confirmed their greatest fears. And for others, I was able to mollify them in some way. But, that's just been the story.
In your writings about the Kuzari, which is a fascinating book, and again, we talked about that in a previous interview. I have a copy of what you've written, and it was wonderful. Was that a combination of a holy approach to the Sefer itself and mixed in with the secular? How would you qualify your approach to writing about that Sefer?
Well, my work on the Kuzari, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi's magnum opus, goes back over 30 years. And it really opened up the world of Jewish scholarship, because if you're going to undertake a translation of a work like that, you really need to understand the nomenclature that he used. And Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, even though he was very much in many ways critical of the Greek philosophy of his time, he perforce had to engage with it in order to demonstrate that Judaism was not a backwater religion. It wasn't primitive. Judaism was the people who discussed Jewish thought were very familiar with the philosophy of the time, but chose Judaism not because of their ignorance of philosophy, but rather because of their knowledge of its shortcomings. And so there are many sections in Rabbi Yehuda Halevi's Kuzari that are dedicated to a discussion of Aristotelian philosophy. So how could I not study that material and gain a familiarity with it if I was going to take the text seriously? And the same thing would have to be said about so many of Maimonides' writings, so many of the Maharal of Prague's writings. Any serious student of these texts needs to have some familiarity with Aristotelian philosophy in order to be able to understand the texts properly. And so, sometimes the very same people who are afraid of engaging with this secular knowledge don't even realize that it comes at their own peril, that they're limiting their access to some of our classic religious texts.
So, Rabbi, with all of this, our discussion about your approach to Judaism, your approach to life, let's take a walk through what you call the big tent. The big tent being your shul, right? No doubt there are individuals within your shul who just embrace everything that you're saying. And then there are people who are sitting across the aisle. Maybe they're Haredi or close to being Haredi, and they're not so hot about this whole thing of Aristotelian philosophy. What I'm curious about is who are all sort of the little cliques within the shul, right? That have developed over the years. What is the shul made up? What sort of Jew?
Well, Avrum, you sized it up fairly well. There's, especially since COVID, we've seen a greater sense of fragmentation of multiple communities within a community. And some would say that's a good thing. Some would say that's not a good thing. I see both the good and the bad. Every Shabbat morning, we have 8 different services. And what that tells me is that, and it's not because there's no room, it's because, thank God, we have a big building and people have different preferences. There's been something that's been coined as the Stiebelization of North American Jewry, which basically means that the large cavernous sanctuaries are no longer as popular as they used to be. People have become what's called more Hamish, more family style, more yeshiva style. That's become more in vogue. And people like smaller services where they can mingle more in a smaller space. That's become more popular. And also, we have multiple rabbis on our staff. And so if I'm not your cup of tea, then there's always another rabbi that you can go to who is very, very capable, qualified, and approachable, who can provide you with whatever you're looking for. So I'm proud of that fact that we are a big tent and that the BAYT provides, I think, for most Jews who want to choose Orthodox Judaism as their brand, provides you with just about everything that you would want.
You give many, many shiurim, many classes. Our dear friend Moish Posner has told me about some of them. He loves your Torah and he loves your expression of Torah. He said one particular shiur that I would really love to attend on Shabbat is your Perkei Avot shiur. He's over the top about it. And you do Shalos and Shuvos, questions and answers. Knowing that the big tent is so full of different types of Jews, how would you prepare for a shiur? How would you prepare for a class?
I'm a bit selfish in that respect. Again, like I said, I decided I'm going to be Daniel Korobkin and not someone else. And so I tend to focus on things that I find to be fascinating. And I've also realized that when I'm excited about the material, I exude that excitement to my listeners. And so that's basically what I do is I pour over the material that I find to be of interest, something that I want to be able to learn something new every time. The Talmud says that a couple of different sages said that I've learned a lot from my teachers, even more from my peers, but I've learned the most from my students. And whatever enrichment I've gained has been mostly through the people that I'm teaching, because every time I teach, I gain a deeper understanding. And through the questions and the proddings of my students, I am so much more enriched. So that's, I guess, all I can say.
Rabbi, it's good that you want to be Daniel Korobkin because Daniel Korobkin's a good man. But when you're giving, you are. But when you're giving a shiur, you used to do daf yomi as an example. My guess is you look out and you see who's attending it that morning, or Perkei Avot, who is attending it that evening. Do you ever adjust ever so slightly if someone in the shiur is more of a Haredi hashkafa, more of a ultra-Orthodox approach to Judaism? Will you adjust and bring sources that would make him happy?
Well, the two shiurim that you made reference to are very different. Daf yomi is by its very nature very limited in its scope. You have only about 45 minutes to go over a huge amount of material on a folio of Talmud. So you're lucky if you can get in a Rashi or a Tosfos. So I don't think that that's such a great example. I would say the Pirkei Avot shiur is something where I try to be creative. And I will quite often cull from multiple different sources, mostly traditional, but sometimes secular sources as well, to be able to perk up the room. I don't cater my classes to a Haredi audience. There are more Haredi teachers available in our community. I think I'm more than the minority of someone who tries to package things for people who are more, who have a foot in both worlds. And that's really who I try to cater my classes to, because that's what excites and energizes me.
Has there been a very visible shift in the Orthodox world that you have seen since you came to Toronto, let's say, or even prior until today? Have you seen a change in the landscape?
I have seen a change in the landscape over the last 15 years. Primarily, I would say, well, number one, because of birth rates, but that's not anything new. Haredi families, yeshiva families typically have larger families than your modern Orthodox families. But it's even more than that. Ever since around COVID time, and certainly it's accelerated since October 7th, more and more of what we would call religious Zionist families, the modern Orthodox families, are leaving Canada. And so we're seeing in my corner of the universe in Thornhill, we're seeing a greater shift to the right of the neighborhood, of our schools, and ultimately that's going to determine the makeup of the BAYT in the next generation, the next 5 to 20 years. I do predict that the shul will move further to the right to accommodate the needs of those who are here in the community, and it'll require the wisdom of a new rabbi to know how to create that balance so that people who are still part of the modern Orthodox world will not feel alienated from the congregation. It's not going to be an easy task.
Yeah, I find that managing the Jewish people is never an easy task. I think Moshe Rabbeinu would agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Rabbi, let's talk about the current rabbinical leadership at the BAYT synagogue. One of the things that you have had to manage, and I think that you have done a brilliant job of it, is you are the rabbi of a shul that one morning was shot at, real bullets. You're the rabbi of a shul where you had programming to encourage people to buy real estate in Israel. And outside, there were vile human beings who were yelling and shouting highly anti-Semitic stuff, highly anti-Israel stuff. And it was your task to walk your congregation through that, many of whom I'm sure were terrified by the whole thing. How did you deal with that?
So first of all, I would say the only thing I would like to slightly correct you on is that the people who demonstrated outside of our shul, I would agree that some of them were vile human beings.
Okay.
But many of them were not. Many of them are simply completely misled, just are very, very ideologically confused and really don't understand life the way they should.
Fair
And I
enough.
really feel sorry for so many of them. But I will say this, the world changed most dramatically for Canadian Jews. And I don't mean that in a hyperbolic way. There's been anti-Semitism throughout the world long before October 7th. The UK has had the problem of Islamism for decades now. The United States has had anti-Semitism, and so many other places in the world. What was unique about Canada is that we were innocent before October 7th. Yes, we knew that the Muslim population was growing, and together with that will come a certain degree of Islamism, of radicalism, but we didn't see it on the streets. We didn't see it in front of our synagogue until October 7th broke. And it was almost overnight that we got this cold shower of the new reality of Canada. I came here when Stephen Harper was the prime minister, and I can't think of a more golden age for Canadian Jewry than under Stephen Harper. And for us to go dramatically to shift to October 7th under a different prime minister who had only antipathy towards Israel, and the same thing with the current prime minister, it's tragic to see the proud tradition of proud Canadian Jews become so demoralized and to change so radically. I don't know a single member of my congregation who's not contemplating leaving Canada, some more seriously than others for various reasons. But everyone is coming up with an escape plan, which is pretty scary when you think about it. That doesn't mean that everyone's leaving. I think most people are going to stay, but everyone's thinking about it, which indicates to me that we're in a totally different place from where we were 15 years ago.
What comes to mind, though, knowing that you got to jump out of bed in the morning, and you have to make sure that your congregants feel safe. What were some of the things that you would do for that?
Right. So the important thing is to show strength and not to show fear and not to show cowardice. Any leader of a community has to display the sense of strength, confidence, and dignity. Most of all, we will never get down to the level of our adversaries. We're not going to engage in shouting matches. We're not going to engage in violence, but we will engage in discourse. We will push back politely and with dignity whenever the Jewish community is challenged, whenever Israel is challenged. And we will try our best to maintain our decorum and create a Kiddush Hashem, to sanctify God, because that's, after all, why Jews are in the diaspora in the first place. And I've tried my best to create that sense of dignity and decorum while still standing tall and proud as a Jew, as a Zionist, as someone who is immensely proud, and also to come to the realization, try and remember the name of the commentator in the Wall Street Journal, Brett Stevens, who is really like he's past the anti-Semitic attacks. It just doesn't pay anymore to fight against the haters. But what we do have to do is stand proud and remember who we are, and just not allow anyone to cause our dignity to erode. Whether or not we're going to be here in 5 or 10 years from now, whether Jews will still be in Canada, is anybody's guess. But while we are here, we will still stand tall, be proud to be Jews, and do whatever we can to contribute to the positive fabric of this great country.
I repeat that I think you did a really brilliant job and continue to assuage the fears of your congregants, and I would say the overall community, in particular the Orthodox community. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
A number of years ago, Rabbi, I wrote an article for the Canadian Jewish News about Rebbitzins. And my thesis was as follows, that a man pursues his passion of Yiddishkeit and wanting to be a rabbi by ultimately getting smicha, accreditation, the rabbinical accreditation, which you did get, and from a very, very lofty place. Your wife's accreditation is her love for her man, which is you, right? Her smicha, and I've seen this with many Rebbitzins, including my mother, God bless her soul, was to be there, was to support you, was to take on her own role, no doubt, within the shul. We'll invite the Rebbitzin and she'll speak, or she'll help us organize and coordinate us. You know, we would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about Karen, who was your teenage girlfriend, I believe, right? Tell us a bit about Karen.
Yeah, we met when we were 16. We were both counselors at a summer camp, Camp Hillel in Los Angeles, and it's been a love story ever since. But I would say that a Rebbitzin is much more than just the person behind the man. It's Karen, at least in my experience, every rabbi has a responsibility to tend to his parish, but sometimes his abilities are limited, especially when relating to women.
Yes.
You can't become too friendly with the female members of the congregation. And also, there are sensitive issues that sometimes a woman needs a woman religious leader to be able to speak with. And so that's really what Rebbitzin Karen is all about. She reaches people that I could never reach. She has a certain skill in relating to people and to offering advice that I don't possess. And she's been remarkably effective in her circle of influence in the congregation.
Will she ever play devil's advocate with you? Danny, you're not doing this right, or you should readjust your thinking on this?
All the time. And that's the reason, the Talmud says that when God created men and women, he deliberately created two voices that are very different from each other so that each could be the adversary, in a sense, of the other. Because without an adversary, you don't know how to up your game. So the reason for having a good wife is so that she can point out to you when you should be doing something better or something different.
Yeah, kol hakavod. You went from LA, you went to Allentown, you came to Toronto, you're going to Jerusalem, God willing, in about a year from now. Does that feel the rightest place to be, if you will, the place for Danny Korobkin to be?
I hope so. I mean, I'll know more when I'm there, but it's the place that I'm so excited to go to. It's been my destination for decades. And my study of Rabbi Yehuda Halevi and his writings only intensified my yearning for Zion. And so whether or not I'm going to be as successful as I have in the diaspora world is anybody's guess. But I'm not going there with the aspirations of, really making a huge noise when I'm there. I hope that my contribution will be of substance, but I'm realistic that it's going to be a much more humble contribution than what I've been able to do in other venues.
Rabbi, succinctly, what do you love about Jerusalem?
I told my congregation, I said, I've just come back because I just came back from Israel about 2 weeks ago. I was scouting the land, using the play on the story of the spies who went to spy on the land of Israel. But I said, I'm one of the good spies.
Kalev.
And I said, yeah, Kalev and Yehoshua. Yeah. I said, Tova haaretz ma'od ma'od. The land is a very, very good land. Jerusalem in particular is the capital city of our people. It is the heart of our people, but it also has so much flavor, so much spice. I love going to Machane Yehuda, the Shuk, and just seeing the hustle and bustle. I love just walking throughout the city and seeing all of the different neighborhoods. I love taking the public transportation. I love all of it. I love taking the train. I love taking the light rail. I love seeing everything that's going on, the little children, all the different kinds of religious flavors, from not religious at all to very, very Hasidish. It's all beautiful. It's all and you feel like you're with your mishpacha. You feel like you're with your family.
Do you wear a tie and jacket when you're in Jerusalem?
Heavens, no.
Good.
Yeah. One of the things I'm looking forward to is getting rid of the tie once I make Aliyah.
Yes.
But it depends. It depends what I'm speaking to different organizations. I may have to occasionally put a tie back on for professional reasons, but I'm hoping to do it as little as possible.
Yeah, I would say when you pack, take at least one tie with you. Yeah.
Okay, duly noted. I better write that down. Okay,
yeah, write that down. Rabbi, as you know, that I'm very much into AI. Do you use AI as a rabbi?
Absolutely.
How?
As a matter of fact, this Shabbat, I'm going to be speaking about Elon Musk's recent interview with The Economist. Did you catch that?
Oh, no, I haven't heard it yet. No, I'm familiar with it.
It's really required listening, because Elon Musk says that within 5 years, AI will surpass the total sum of human knowledge.
Yeah.
And his belief is that when that happens, mankind will be significantly enhanced in a way that human beings don't even have a frame of reference to understand how the world is going to change, which, makes me conclude that we may be entering messianic times. I don't know, but I'm just, that's what I'm going to be speaking about over Shabbat.
That's fascinating.
But I use AI regularly because there's so much there. And I just like when other online tools, long before AI came about, I have thousands, tens of thousands of religious books on a disk, on a drive on my computer. I have an immense library, the size of the Library of Congress, of just Hebrew Sfarim at my fingertips.
Magnificent.
So who wouldn't want to use the technology to increase his knowledge, increase his scholarship, and to enhance what he can share with the congregation?
You probably don't remember this, but a long time ago, you said to me, if not for Sefaria, which is software on the computer, basically taking all of the Jewish books, the Sepharim, almost many of them that have been written, and allowing anybody access to them. You said to me, my scholarship would not be what it is without Sefaria.
True. It's true. Because it's for one simple reason. Number one, it's time management, because there were times when I remembered vaguely that there's a passage in tractate so and so. Sometimes it would take me hours to find it before the advent of the internet. Okay, but now I can find it literally in seconds.
Yes.
So the ability to accumulate information is so much more efficient today. Safari is just one example of so many online tools that exist today.
So I tell you about AI because, as you know, I ask AI to develop a poem about my guests, and we have one here for you. I know you're very humble and you're not much into this, but just bear with me for a moment. It's called "The Rabbi Who Helped Build a BAYT." Take your fingers out of your ears. Some rabbis rise to speak a sacred word, then quietly return behind the page. But some step down and enter people's lives, their joy, their grief, their uncertain age. Rabbi Daniel Korobkin came northward, carrying Torah beneath his arm, questions burning brightly in his mind, and in his voice, a shepherd's steady calm. At the BAYT, he built more than a synagogue. He helped create a shelter for the soul, a place where many kinds of Jews could enter, yet still become one sacred living whole. He brought the Rambam into conversation, made the Kuzari sing in English rhyme, joined science, faith, and Jewish meditation, and placed eternal questions into time. Across North America, rabbis heard him, a leader offering courage, counsel, care. When Israel suffered, when hatred thundered, he stood unwaveringly, proudly there. Beside him stood his wife and partner, Karen, sharing every burden, dream, and prayer. Behind them lived a mother's kinder transport, the memory of loss they learned to bear. Now 15 years, it's actually 16 years, become a final chapter. Toronto's winter yields Jerusalem's sun, yet leaving does not end a rabbi's influence. The seed he planted have only just begun. Rabbi Korobkin leaves one BAYT to build a home in Zion, but those he taught will carry something more. Go forward, Rabbi, toward Jerusalem. May heaven guide you as you make your way. The BAYT you strengthen still will speak your Torah long after you have made Aliyah.
That's beautiful. Thanks, Avram. Let me just say that as I said previously, I've been so much more enhanced by having had the privilege of leading the BAYT than the BAYT has had of having me. And I think more of the BAYT will be carried to Jerusalem than my remnant here at the BAYT. Again, I feel that in this wonderful, beautiful, whatever you want to call it, the shidduch, the marriage, the relationship between rabbi and congregation, I've definitely married above myself, and I did much better in the shidduch than the other side did. And I just am so appreciative to the congregation, to the various members, to the friendships that I've forged over these years that will be indelible, and that I know will continue, because real friendship continues. And I also know that so many of my congregants have already gone to Israel, and so many are on the way, and are constantly visiting. So I'm really looking forward to maintaining so much of the BAYT in Jerusalem.
Can you do that? Are you in touch with the congregants from San Diego and from Allentown? Can you do that?
Some, yeah, some yes, some more, some less. You can. I think it'll be easier for me because I'm entering into this senior chapter of my life. So I hopefully, and my hope is, I can't guarantee it, but my hope is I'll have more time to devote to maintaining those relationships.
Right. Rabbi, on a personal note, I want you to know that I feel that since you came to town, that Orthodox Judaism, halakhic Judaism, was something that I could breathe through more so because of your approach. You always gave me a great sense of hope and possibility when I heard your shirim, when you and I did interviews together. You allowed me to breathe. You really did. Because I've never quite given up on yeshiva. The yeshiva bacher is still inside of me, and you have been very, very supportive of that. And from the depth of my heart, I thank you so much for that. I really do.
Thank you, Avram. I hope other people feel the same way. I know that I've been very enriched by our friendship, and all I can say is that I'm in awe of what you were able to do with V'ahavta, and the indelible imprint that you've left on the Jewish community and the lives that you've impacted. And anyone who feels that just because a person is not Orthodox, that they are in any way less than, really presumes to speak for God when they really shouldn't. And as far as I'm concerned, you're one of the stars in God's entourage, and I love you for it. So keep up doing what you're doing.
I love you too. This program is proudly sponsored by a devoted BAYT member in heartfelt appreciation of Rabbi Daniel Korobkin's extraordinary leadership. His wisdom, compassion, dedication, and scholarship have left an enduring impact on the BAYT community. May his remarkable legacy continue to inspire and strengthen the community for generations to come. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us, for watching, and for listening. I'm deeply honored when people come and watch the show, and I thank you so much for that. And of course, I thank my dear friend, Rabbi Daniel Korobkin, for being with me today. I'm going to guess this is kind of the beginning of the final year, if you will. And I feel, again, it's a kavod for me to be able to interview you about where you have been, what you have accomplished, where we are today, and where we're going. So once again, thank you, Rabbi Korobkin.
Thank you, Avram. It's been a pleasure. Really a pleasure.
Until we meet again, folks, as my mother used to say, sei gesund, go in good health. Thank you.